Welcome to the Rewilded Human podcast, where Dr. Lucille and Lynn will tackle your most difficult and intimate questions with candor, tough love, and a little dash of humor. In today's episode,
it's hard to keep a secret. It just feels so awful. And you're worried that somewhere out of nowhere, somebody could come up and reveal this to your husband. You won't have the complicated grieving of, they're dying and you still are hanging on to rage towards them.
You cannot change. She has made up her mind and she started transitioning. I don't even think there's any going back. Once you've started transitioning, I've seen so many cases where people change their minds and there's no going back. So once she started the whole process, it's very difficult to stop the process and change her mind. But you are not going to be the one to change her mind. That's not going to happen.
Welcome, everybody, to the Rewilded Human podcast, where I, Dr. Lucille, and my co-host, the beautiful Lynn Hardy, are going to help you just clear away all those issues that you don't need in your life so that you can go back to living a much more natural, empowered life.
That's why we're here, guys, and welcome to our episode 29. Can you believe it's 29 already? Wow.
29. We're racking them up, folks.
We are. So guys, before we start your questions, we have some feedback from our number one fan, Don, and he sent me this message. I have been caught up in the digital world before with meeting people, but I'm going to take your ladies' advice and keep my feet planted in reality. Thank you for your sound advice. So this is on his follow-up from episode 19. It was his question about finding connections in a digital world. So he says he's going to take our advice, keep his feet planted in reality. So spend more time in nature and not take the whole online world so seriously, especially I think when it comes to finding a mate and dating and things like that. So your feedback is really important to us, guys. So please do keep your feedback coming and the questions coming and everything. And then we're going to jump into your questions next.
Okay, so we're going to
start. Lucille, take it away.
With Angie. Angie is racked with shame and guilt. I did some things in my youth that I'm deeply ashamed of. I've been married to a wonderful man for over 13 years, and I've never told him about any of it because I'm afraid he'd leave me if he knew. At the same time, I feel guilty for keeping a secret from him. And what if he finds out some other way? That would be worse. What should I do?
Wow, that's and back to the digital world, now we're leaving a digital footprint everywhere. So if you have like naked pictures floating around or worse, and those kinds of things, it's eventually it can resurface. I don't know if that's what Angie's talking about, but my mind, of course, went straight into the gutter.
Yes.
Where else?
Yeah.
I mean, do we need full disclosure with our husbands, with our mates? Do we need to tell them everything about our past? Do you think that's
I think it would be very helpful. Absolutely. Because it's going to erode the relationship anyway if one partner is sitting in a whole bunch of tension about something from their past. They're not able to be completely free and themselves. And I agree with Angie that it's hard to keep a secret. It just feels so awful. And you're worried that somewhere out of nowhere, somebody could come up and reveal this to your husband. So if at all possible, I think it is important to have a heart-to-heart conversation with him. Listen, if he loves you, if you've been together for over 13 years, I think most people in that situation would be only too willing to forgive and forget.
Lucille, what do you think about like body counts? Now people are talking about body counts, like meaning how many sexual partners you've had. I didn't really realize that's what it meant. Do you think that people need to disclose that to each other?
I don't think so. Because everybody has a certain body count. Well, not everybody, but who cares? If you didn't do anything, if it was mutually consenting, if you didn't do anything horrible, if you don't have porn all over the internet as a result. Who cares? It's irrelevant. I don't know the nature of what Angie is so ashamed about. Sometimes we are very, very ashamed of things in our past that, really don't amount to much once you've revealed them. Like, some people might look at it and go, okay, it's, I'd be ashamed of it too, but so what? It's not going to destroy our relationship.
And if he's an understanding guy, and I mean, you obviously married him for a reason, if he's a good person and an understanding person, I mean, I guess the issue could be, he could say, well, why didn't you tell me before we were married? Or why didn't you tell me earlier?
Yes.
That could come up.
Yeah, but if it's something that's not really going to impact on your relationship now, like, it's not like the police are going to come to your door perhaps any second, or, if it's in the past, I think most partners would be very forgiving and just say, well, you know what, let's just move on.
So you think it's better to disclose it than to carry this shame and guilt and worry that it's going to get exposed eventually, right?
Yes. But again, I always defer to the questioner and I say, well, you weigh it, your situation far better than we do. And that's my advice. But, you have to, use your own judgment, basically.
What if it's something that can really hurt the husband?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, that's the point. I mean, one of the things, for example, might be that the husband is staunch Christian and he married his wife believing that she didn't have yes, perhaps, and that this would be crushing for him.
And it turns out she was a sex worker, right?
It turns out she was a sex worker.
That would be awkward. That would be awkward.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are some situations in which it might destroy the marriage, depending on the husband's belief systems, how strongly he holds to them. So that's why I say, use your judgment. I can only tell you I understand it's really hard to live with this secret. It would be far better to unload it. If you really feel you can't, if there's too much risk, well, unfortunately, you're going to have to live with the secret.
Yeah, you really have to use your judgment because we don't have enough information to really know how bad the situation is. But if you can get it off your chest, then you will feel better. And if you think you have an understanding husband who will forgive you or understand or not judge you for it, then it's better to come clean, right?
Right.
Okay, so we're moving on to Tony. Tony is hanging on to the past. My family has always made me feel like I'm the black sheep. Oh, that's me too. I can relate to that. My brothers always teased me and bullied me, and my parents did nothing about it. Now we're all grown up and have families of our own. Except for a few verbal digs here and there, the bullying has settled down. But I find I can't get rid of the anger I have towards them. My parents won't be around much longer, and I don't want to hang on to this. How do I let go? Why do we carry these old, wounds with us from our childhood and everything? And, I see this a lot. People, they cannot forgive, something that happened. Oh my God, when I was 3 years old and you were picking on me and that's why I'm fat now, because, right? It's like using that as an excuse for your current state of affairs in your life. I mean, Tony, I feel bad for you that, it's terrible to be teased and bullied but when you have brothers, I mean, this is quite common in families, right? And children, they don't really mean it in a malicious way. It's just kind of part of growing up.
And I don't know how long the bullying went on. I mean, yes, I agree with everything that you've said, Lynn, that, if it's something like, you're 5 years old and your brother's 7 years old and he's, calling you names and all of that. And then it ends, before you reach the age of 10, that I would say there's an issue there with you hanging on to the past too much. But if you felt like this went on like way too long, like maybe into your late teens or something like that, and nobody ever acknowledged that this was painful to you, then I agree that this is something that you need to develop a better perspective. You need to detach your ego and your self-esteem from all of this. But having said that, that's hard too, because a lot of the times people can get really traumatized through bullying, and especially bullying, not only stranger bullying, but bullying in the family. And so I would suggest that if you really have tried to detach from the anger and the shame and all the wounding that you've had, and it hasn't worked so far, then I would suggest maybe you need to think about how this was traumatizing, because if you're put down 1,000,000 times a day, every day, and you can't escape it, and nobody ever acknowledges that some of your good qualities, they never pat you on the back or whatever. You're kind of like the dumping ground for the family resentments. You're the scapegoat. That can be very traumatizing. And I would suggest, maybe that you, if you haven't already done so, maybe talk to a professional, like, a mental health specialist. You could go into counseling or psychotherapy for it. And I would just say that it is also a crucial thing for you to unload this before your parents die. I think that's really going to help you so much going forward. You won't have the complicated grieving of, they're dying and you still are hanging on to rage towards them.
Should Tony speak to the parents about this issue, do you think, to try to resolve it?
Well,
I think there's resentment towards the parents in addition to the siblings, I feel.
Absolutely, yeah. And I don't know enough about your family dynamics there to advise what you should do. Parents often, they're older than us, but they're often not more mature than us. So your parents better than we do, of course, and you might want to ask yourself, how would they take it if I tried to talk to them about it? Because some parents would come back and be very offended, or they would deny, or they would put them down some more and say, "Oh, you're too sensitive. We were just joking." And it could be more shaming and putting down, which you don't really want to experience anymore. And the other thing is, like, the parents, I don't know, could be dementing. Yes, and there's no point in talking to them. They don't have the cognitive ability to even understand what you're referring to. It could help if there's one sibling that may have been, warmer or closer to you, and they've never acknowledged what went on in the family. And you might want to approach them and say, I really need to talk. I really need to get this off my chest. And they may be receptive. You don't know. Maybe they'll be empathic, and you might open their eyes and they didn't realize how much damage the family caused you. So that's another approach. Yeah, but I would say it's a really good idea that you want to get this off your chest, so to speak. You want to get it. You want to be relieved of all this anger and shaming before your parents die, for sure, because that's crucial. That's a crucial milestone in anybody's life when their parents die, and you want it to be a clean and smooth process of grieving. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be carrying this around for a long time.
No, absolutely. I agree with you, Lucille, completely. And it's just such a long time to carry something with you, like to carry something like this throughout your life. It's really sad. So it is definitely better to address it now than to keep it for the rest of your life and let it make you bitter and angry towards your family. I mean, ultimately, that's the only family that you have. So yes, absolutely. I agree with you, Lucille. So we wish you good luck, Tony, and hope you can get you have this resolved some way so that you feel better and at peace, and you can look back on your childhood, and see the happy and the good times. That would be absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. Okay. So Marge can't accept her daughter's choice. My 31-year-old daughter decided to transition to being a male 2 years ago. I'm still heartbroken and can't accept it, even though the rest of the family seems to have no problem with it. I remember her as a very sweet, feminine girl, but now with the transitioning, she's become grotesque. with no breasts, tons of facial and leg hair, and a big belly. She even swaggers around like a truck driver. I spent a long time trying to get her to change her mind. She has PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I believe this led her to believe that she was really a male. But she denies it and accuses me of being a bad mother for not accepting her as she is. How can I deal with this?
Well, PCOS can raise testosterone levels. That's very common in women. And but this is a much deeper issue than that. Obviously, you know, the whole trans movement that's happening right now, it's so acceptable and people are being pushed in this direction. So I can totally understand the mother's frustration. And as a parent, you know, I have a 26-year-old son. If he would now tell me I'm going to be a woman mom from now on, call me Dana or something, it would be very, very difficult for me. So Marjorie, we totally emphasize and empathize with you and understand your pain, but you have no, you have no control over an adult child. That's the ultimate thing to remember, is that you cannot change. She has made up her mind and she started transitioning. I don't even think there's any going back. Once you've started transitioning, I've seen so many cases where people change their minds and there's no going back. So once she started the whole process, it's very difficult to stop the process and change her mind. But you are not going to be the one to change her mind. That's not going to happen. You know, you have to either accept that this is happening and continue to love her, him, and respect the choices that your child has made. What do you think, Dr. Lucille?
I thoroughly agree. And I have had clients, you know, a few of them who are in this position. Mm-hmm. And the one thing is, there's just no point in continuing to try and get your daughter to accept, or son to accept, that they made a mistake. There's just you can't do that. I agree with Lynn. They're now adults. They have the authority to do whatever they want to with their bodies and their lifestyles. The other thing that I would say is, you also don't have to knuckle under the pressure of the family to just be overjoyed with this whole thing. Yeah. I would say, you know, just not that you have to bring up your displeasure or your concern or anything. You don't have to bring it up. But I don't think that you also have to pretend, you know, that everything's fine. As much as possible, of course, you want to maintain a relationship with your child. You want to keep the contact, and you do love them. And sometimes, you know, what the children will also do, I've noticed, is they'll try to keep going at the parent to see if they've been accepted yet or not. Are you still having a hard time with this? Or they may not even come out with it that directly, but they will make indirect comments about, oh yeah, I know you've got such a hard time with me now because of what I did, you know, that sort of comment.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think you have to be very careful about how you answer to that. I don't think you need to take the bait and get into an argument, but you can say something very neutral, like, you know, I just accept that you've made this choice. This is your life now. I still love you, and I'm just hoping that we can go on and have the best possible relationship. You don't have to keep telling people that you're uncomfortable with it. Mm-hmm. You just have to focus on, this is where we're at. This is the reality, and let's just make the best of it now.
I love what you're saying, Dr. Lucina. I love that you say that she doesn't have to, you know, go along with everyone else because everyone else is jumping for joy. She can still be true to herself and you know, without being rude to the child, express her own beliefs and her own feelings, which is, it's important to acknowledge that as well, that, you know, this is difficult. And I think it's difficult for any parent. Sure, you see, yes, on TV and they're so happy. Yay, I always wanted a boy. I'm so happy now. But I think that is not the reality for most people. So it's a very, very tough situation. Yeah, Marge, we wish you really the best of luck, and hopefully you guys can still have a a beautiful relationship together. Yeah, not much more we can say about that. Okay, next question. Jill. Jill has a common workplace issue. I was overjoyed when I finally got a job in HR and at a large accounting firm. But within a few weeks, I noticed there was a nasty clique of co-workers who were bad-mouthing other employees for not going along with their political opinions or their criticisms of the supervisors. I don't want anything to do with them, but they're starting to make sarcastic comments about me and undermining my work. I don't want to lose my job, but I wake up every day with a headache when I have to go into the office. What should I do? Sounds like not a very happy workplace to be.
Now, this is what they refer to as toxic
Very
workplace,
toxic work.
right?
Yes.
And it causes tremendous amount of stress, and it also causes a lot of people going on disability or short-term leave, or just, trying to find other work. So it's so disruptive. And I think one of the issues I see with clients who have this problem is management is very poor at dealing with these issues. I mean, I think they see it, but they're just not trained. A lot of them are just not trained in how to deal with this and how to change the culture to remove the disruptive influences of these little nasty cliques. And it does no good for the company's bottom line either if their employees are suffering like this because of a number of very immature individuals, right? So it's actually much more common than you think. And I get clients also who are complaining that the supervisors or managers are kind of in on it too. They have their favorites, and my God.
Yeah.
It's really impossible. Well, if you see, Jill, that there is no other way to change the situation, like you can't, like if you can see that maybe the supervisor or your manager, whomever, is not willing or able to do anything about it, I think that the next step is to start looking for other work. However, if you do feel that there's a manager or a supervisor that sees the problem and may be trying to do something about it, then I would see, if I were you, I would go talk to them and try and find out if there's some solution here.
Do you think that could get her in trouble, that she's like, ratting them out, and it could make things worse?
That is a risk, absolutely. That's why I'm saying these can be very, very sticky situations, and sometimes your best option is to start looking for another job.
Yeah,
but the other thing too is it can become so nasty that you have people, falsely accusing you of doing things that you haven't done. And so what I would suggest is, if you're getting sarcastic comments, if you're getting any kind of undermining of your work, like, people are for example, claiming that you didn't get back to them in time about a certain project or whatever they may say about you, I would say you have to document everything carefully. Document all, the work that you've produced, that you did it on time. Document any nasty or sarcastic comments, and just have a file available to you in case anybody starts making a case to fire you.
That's actually,
because firing or termination with just cause means you're left in the lurch. Like, in most cases, you don't get any kind of package. You're not packaged out. In that case, you should document everything that happens, everything that you are uncomfortable with, that you don't agree with, that could undermine your performance appraisal. And you may have to take that to a lawyer and get a consultation.
Yeah, that would be sad if it went that far. I mean, it would be nice if it could
absolutely.
be somehow peacefully resolved, or maybe sometimes things kind of blow over. And I in my youth, I was working in a place and I didn't know what was happening, but every time I would walk into the change room, everyone would be quiet. And I didn't know what was going on until a friend told me that everyone, I was waitressing, this was in Toronto a long, long time ago, and everyone decided that I was spying on everyone and reporting to management. And I didn't
Wow.
understand why everyone would just be silenced the minute I would walk into the room or the change room or anywhere. And it's because everyone decided that I'm a spy and I'm reporting to management. And it's like everyone turned on me, and it was just absolutely horrible. And I just, and of course, there was no protection or anything for people back then.
Sure.
It wasn't like it is today, but it was terrible. But eventually it did blow over, and I made, of course, my position very clear to this friend, and she stuck up for me, and she explained that Lynn is not spying on you guys. So Jill, hopefully you can have some peaceful way of resolving it, or eventually maybe time just kind of blows things over. But as far as like getting involved in political talks and things like that, I mean, the workplace is not for that. It's best to just stay out of those completely and not have these people force their views on you. I mean, it should just be a professional place where you go, you do your job. But it's hard because you spend like the majority of your life there. You spend more time with these people than you spend with your family. So it has to be a nice place that's not going to drive you crazy. And if it is very toxic, like Dr. Lucille said, then ultimately you have to go. That's the only solution if there is no other solution.
Yeah, and this is one reason, and one of very few reasons why I appreciate the ability to work remotely.
Mm-hmm.
If you can do that, Jill, I would say try and get as much time working remotely as you possibly can, because that's going to be the way to manage things until you do get another job. Quite frankly, your mental health is not worth it. You need to do everything you can.
I wonder like how many women are, because I see a lot of, do you see this, Lucille? I have like a friend, for example, and there's a lot of women where she works. It's all women. And it just gets so toxic. Everyone's turning on each other. And then these two are best friends, then they're turning. So sometimes if you don't have a good balance between male and female energies, things get even more toxic with too many women. I know it sounds bad. I love women, so don't get me wrong. Not love them in that way, but I like working with women, but being with women. But oftentimes when you have too many women together, it's just too much estrogen.
Well, I think that may be true, but also it's the maturity level of the people.
Yeah.
And if you have a whole group of women who are still stuck in being teenagers, who gang up on, other women who, are, they need to protect their little clique, their little tribe, and everybody else needs to be an outcast. And that's the way they get their sense of belonging, is to be in a group of really nasty women who are dissing everybody who's not part of the group, right?
Mean girls.
Mean girls. And it's a matter of like incredible immaturity, and they just haven't done their work on themselves, and they don't even understand the concept of professionalism.
No.
That you can be as nasty as you want to and gossip with your girlfriends outside of the workplace, but there is no reason, absolutely no reason, to bring that into the workplace. That is just horrible.
I agree.
So anyway,
Jill, right back to us. I know. Jill, let us know. Let us know how this gets resolved. We would love to hear back from you. Guys, that brings us to the end of episode 29. Thank you so much for sticking with us. And as always, please keep sending us your questions and your feedback. It's super important to us. Check out the links and everything below. Dr. Lucille, thank you always for your input and your insight and everything. I love working with you. This is so much.
Well, thank you, Lynn, because you are the brains behind this and the organizing factor in all of this. And I so appreciate that we're doing this together. Thank you.
Me too. Guys, and you need to tune in for next episode. It's going to be a rapid fire about some hot topics and some really interesting questions. You don't want to miss that. Thanks, guys, and see you in the next episode.
Okay, bye-bye. Please be aware that Lynn and I are here to provide insights, advice, stories that are for educational and entertainment purposes only. None of our content should be considered to be personal, medical, or mental health therapy. If you are experiencing a mental health or physical health challenge, please consult the appropriate healthcare specialist. We are here to provide the best possible content in an atmosphere of positive conversation and personal growth.